This video is for entertainment purposes only, and any investments you make are your responsibility. Always do your own research. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. Welcome to EDH 420 Presents Spec Sheet, a video series about the value of Magic the Gathering cards and the potential for gains. Today we are speculating on 3 cards that have been below $5 since launch. Cosima God of the Voyage from the set Kaldheim, Profane Tutor from Modern Horizons 2, Oswald Fiddlebender from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, the recent Dungeons & Dragons themed set. Let's take a closer look at each of these cards. Cosima God of the Voyage. Cosima God of the Voyage is a blue legendary god creature from Kaldheim. It's a double-faced card. We will discuss both sides. The front face of Cosima reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile Cosima. If you do, it gains whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If Cosima is exiled, you may put a Voyage counter on it. If you don't, return Cosima to the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it and draw X cards, where X is the number of Voyage counters on it. This is a mouthful, but unlike other cards from the past, the more writing the better these days, generally speaking. In this case, I would say this is a pretty good card. I've been playing Cosima in Commander and a bit in Canadian Highlander. It really benefits from mana acceleration like Birds of Paradise, Lotus Petal, or Mana Crypt to get it out on second turn. Snap lands or fetch lands work great. Once Cosima has been exiled, when you play lands, you give Cosima counters, which will draw you even more cards. Lands that search for other lands allow you to do so as an instant, therefore giving you some great chances to respond with Cosima. Pairing Cosima with a land cheat strategy, one that lets you play more than one land a turn, will also power Cosima. Cards like Exploration, Oracle of Moldiah, and Burgeoning will pump up Cosima quickly. As I mentioned before, Cosima God of the Voyage has a reverse side, and that is the Omen Keel. The Omen Keel reads, when a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards as long as they remained exiled. It has a crew cost of 1, and its power and toughness is 3/3. Another ability that plays with land. The Omen Keel takes lands from your opponent and lets you play them. Not quite as strong as Cosima, the Omen Keel may find its way into play from time to time when a vehicle strategy is preferred, but I feel most of the time Cosima is the star. Cosima can be a commander in a mono blue deck. Personally, I do like commanders that draw cards, as card drawing is so important, and you should be able to cast your commander at least a few times each game. Downside. Cosima doesn't have a traditional downside. It's a 2/4 creature for 3 if nothing else. However, for its first ability to complete, it does need to survive till your next upkeep. If it lasts that long, then you are pretty much home free. For Cosima to really shine, you will need a few turns of playing lands to pump Cosima up, or cheat lands into play like I mentioned before. If you are suffering from a lack of land, then Cosima is just going to float in exile like General Zod. Potential. At the time of recording, Cosima God of the Voyage is worth 83 cents according to MTG Goldfish. It could drop by 50% or more, but could also go up a couple of dollars, which would be a nice return. Profane Tutor. What I wouldn't give to draw the perfect card right now. Tutor Effects refer to cards that allow you to search your library for a card, and the best ones put that card right into your hand. Demonic Tutor is the quintessential tutor. For 2 mana, search your library for any card, put it into your hand. Recently, a new tutor was printed that is pretty close to being another Demonic Tutor. Profane Tutor reads, Suspend 2, 1 black, 1 colorless. Rather than cast this card from your hand, pay 1 black and 1 colorless and exile it with 2 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Profane Tutor is basically a Demonic Tutor, but with the Suspend ability. It seems like there can never be enough tutor effects, and remember the ones that put the card in your hand are the best. Suspend is an investment, but at a cost of 2, Profane Tutor will go back on the stack pretty quickly compared to any other Suspend cards, and with the mana already invested, when it comes time to resolve Profane Tutor, you will have your lands free to cast the card you searched for or to help Profane Tutor resolve. There are ways to cheat Profane Tutor onto the stack without spending any mana, and without waiting 2 turns. The first way that jumps out to me is Cascade. Cascade decks like Uterus are always looking for new Suspend cards to put onto the stack, and usually the cheaper the cost, the better. As Foretold is a fun card that lets you cast spells for free if they have mana value less than the number of counters on it, and 0 cost spells can be cast with As Foretold when it has no counters. Downside. With Profane Tutor suspended, your opponents will see it coming and may be holding cards like Aven Mind Sensor or Opposition Agent to thwart your plans. Or Thwart. I guess that's technically possible. Does anyone still play Thwart? Should those cards show up, you can always try Counter Magic. Also, creature removal works. Cards like Go for the Throat or Swords to Plowshares are good, but if you want to ensure removal, might I suggest cards with Split Second, like Sudden Death or Sudden Shock. Split Second cards cannot be countered by spells or responded to by pretty much anything with the exception of Counterbalance or mana abilities. Potential. At the time of recording, Profane Tutor is worth $3.49 according to MTG Goldfish, and it could stay flat or drop, but in this case I feel Profane Tutor could be worth as much as $5 or $10 in the future, and that would be a good return on your investment. Oswald Fiddlebender. Not only does this card have a fun name, it also has a pretty serious ability. Oswald Fiddlebender reads, Magical Tinkering. 1 white, tap. Sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. Do you remember when a bear was a bear? A 2/2 that was, well, a 2/2, and that was enough? Well, that just doesn't cut it anymore. Right away, the main comparison is Birthing Pod, a green artifact with a Phyrexian mana cost that puts a creature from your library straight into play. Because it's an artifact, it doesn't suffer summoning sickness. Any card that searches up artifacts and puts them into play is pretty powerful, and there's a lot of potential for this card to cause a stir. For example, Transmute Artifact is considered a very powerful card. However, the target enters play right away, instead of having to wait a whole round like with Oswald Fiddlebender. Both cards require you to sacrifice an artifact, but Transmute Artifact is about 100 times more expensive to buy. Tinker is another similar card. You sacrifice an artifact to get any artifact into play from your library, but without the cost restriction. In fact, Tinker is so powerful that it has been banned. Speaking of banned cards, Hullbreacher's recent banning makes me wonder if Oswald was supposed to be blue, but after the Hullbreacher's banning they changed it to white. It's a popular opinion that Hullbreacher could have been printed as a white card instead of blue, as Hullbreacher is inherently more powerful as a blue card and Oswald would be too. I imagine there'll be some decks that pair Oswald with red to combo with Goblin Welder, taking advantage of the artifact going to the graveyard and using Welder to bring them back into play. Goblin Engineer would go nicely in this deck as well. Keeping in mind, when building a deck around Oswald Fiddlebender, mana cost of the artifact will need to be considered. Because this card is focused on searching your library, just like Profane Tutor, you will want to have safeguards against anti-library searching measures. The community is pretty excited for this card, and at the time of recording there has been a limited availability on Card Kingdom and Star City games. There are several different versions of this card. I find it hard to say which edition will be the best to buy. Perhaps buying more than one edition to hedge your bet is a good strategy. At the time of this recording, Oswald Fiddlebender is worth $2.86 according to MTG Goldfish. I could see it doubling over time, and I would be surprised to see it drop lower than it is now, but anything is possible when trading in Magic the Gathering. Thanks for joining me today and discussing these cards on Spec Sheet. If you enjoyed this content, share with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss out on further episodes.